The Amazon has always fascinated me. Somehow I knew each trip there was a challenge to my understanding of reality. But I confess I was never truly prepared for what was to come. Even though I was often labeled as skeptical and rational, I felt a magnetic pull toward the jungle, urging me deeper and deeper. People would say the forest had a power of its own, an energy that transcended human understanding. And while I often thought of that as an exaggeration, it was impossible to deny the effect this environment had on those who dared to explore it. So, when I heard the stories of disappearances and unexplained encounters, I decided I needed to see it with my own eyes. I found reports from scientists, explorers, and even local residents who spoke of experiences that defied logic. There were rumors of people who vanished without a trace, of inexplicable visions, of indescribable creatures, and that consumed me. I had to know what secrets the Amazon held. I was convinced I could walk away unscathed, that it was all just stories meant to scare off tourists. However, something inside me wouldn't stop pulsing, as if it were an alarm, a voice telling me this wasn't an ordinary journey. As I packed my bag and studied the routes, the reports seemed to come to life, like echoes from the past trying to warn me. What really exists in the depths of the jungle? As soon as I arrived, the vastness of the Amazon seemed to swallow me whole. Preparing mentally to enter the forest is one thing, but standing there in front of the massive trees, with the constant sounds of animals and insects echoing all around, is completely different. The air felt thicker, and each step seemed to make the jungle even more impenetrable. I remember one of the first things I learned about the Amazon. Only a small fraction of this forest has been explored. Much of the vegetation and the creatures inhabiting these dense areas remain unknown, even to the most experienced biologists. It's as if the Amazon were a world unto itself, with its own laws and mysteries. With each ancient tree and every shadow cast by sunlight filtering through the dense foliage, I could feel the weight of millennia of history. The forest has always been surrounded by legends and myths that seem to grow stronger here, far from any civilization. I'd heard stories from local residents who spoke with reverence of spirits that protected certain areas of the jungle, and of creatures that, according to them, didn't belong to our world. Many indigenous people believe the jungle is alive, endowed with its own force, capable of deciding who enters and who leaves its depths. For them, this sacred land must be both respected and feared. As I ventured further, I began to understand this reverence. There was something different about the Amazon, a feeling that I was being watched, assessed. Unlike the cities where the unknown feels distant, here the mystery was tangible. And with every sound I heard, I felt the forest pulling me deeper, as if it were testing my courage, or perhaps my sanity. Following these little explored paths was risky but irresistible. A mixture of respect and adrenaline surged through me, and with each new step, I wondered if I was a brave explorer or an unsuspecting fool. One morning, just after dawn, I met a group of local guides who knew the area better than any map or technology ever could. While talking with them, one of the guides, a middle-aged man with a serious, weathered look, mentioned a case he swore was no legend. He spoke about a foreign researcher who, years ago, ventured into an area of the forest where few dared to go. It was as if the jungle had swallowed him without a trace. The details of the disappearance were hazy, but it had started as a simple, routine expedition. The researcher, an experienced biologist, had been collecting plant samples for a study when he decided to stray a bit further from camp. The rest of the team noticed his absence only when night fell. When they searched for him at the spot he was supposed to be, they found only his backpack lying on the ground, open, as if it had been left in a hurry. The following days were marked by a desperate search. Teams ventured deeper into the jungle, following the faint trail left by his footsteps, but every lead seemed to vanish as if the forest itself were hiding something. The guides spoke with a reverence bordering on fear, believing he had crossed some invisible line, a boundary that wasn't meant to be trespassed. For the locals, it was clear the forest had claimed him. There were moments when members of the search team swore they heard distant screams, but the closer they got, the more the sounds blended with the noises of the jungle. No one dared stray from the group. Each of them felt watched, as if they were intruders. The guides described an oppressive atmosphere, as if the forest itself was suffocating them, demanding their retreat. The researcher was never found. Only his belongings were recovered, scattered like incomplete clues to a puzzle. Rumors among the guides said he had violated something sacred, that there were forces in the forest that didn't tolerate strangers. Looking into the guide's eyes as he told the story, I felt a chill run down my spine, and an urgent question arose. Could something like this happen to me? That mysterious disappearance wasn't just a story, it was a warning. As I recalled the tale, the jungle around me seemed to grow thicker, almost as if it were inviting me to test my own limits, or perhaps to lose myself as he did. As I ventured deeper into the forest and spent more time listening to the stories from the guides and locals, one account particularly captured my attention. A young guide, reserved and cautious in his movements, shared an experience he had personally gone through, something that, by the tone of his voice, still haunted him. During one of his first expeditions, he recounted, the forest brought him face to face with something he couldn't quite describe. It was late afternoon, and he was leading a small group of tourists to a viewing spot. Darkness was approaching, and the trail was beginning to close in around them. The guide described the forest at that time of day as a living presence, almost suffocating, with vegetation growing thicker with every step. As they moved forward, the group began to hear a strange sound, somewhere between a growl and a whisper, that seemed to come from all directions. The tourists assumed it was just an animal, but the guide sensed something different, an energy that seemed to want them gone. Then suddenly, he saw something between the trees. At first, he thought it was just a shadow cast by the fading light, but he quickly realized the figure had its own shape and movement. It was tall, with an indistinct outline that blended in with the leaves. Its eyes, or what looked like eyes, had a strange glow, as if lit from within. He stood frozen, unable to look away, and felt as though the air around him was locked in place. The tourists began to notice his discomfort and turned in the direction of the figure. But before they could fully grasp what it was, the guide snapped out of his trance and ordered everyone to run back to the main trail. The group didn't hesitate. Panic seized each of them, and they ran until they were out of that section of the forest. After that experience, the guide said he never returned to that spot and avoided taking groups to unfamiliar areas. He spoke about the figure with a reverence that was a mix of fear and respect, as if he knew that it didn't belong to the world we know. His voice trembled as he described the details, and though I hadn't seen anything like it myself, I could feel the intensity of that encounter. The forest seemed to have a life of its own, concealing secrets that challenge what we can understand. A few days after hearing the young guide's account, I came across another story that seemed to challenge everything I thought I knew about the Amazon. This time, it was an older man, a hunter who had spent his life in the depths of the forest, someone who knew every trail and animal as if they were part of him. But even with all that knowledge and experience, he had lived through a situation that had nearly cost him his life, something he still hesitated to share. The hunter was alone, tracking in a remote area of the jungle when he suddenly realized he was lost. He said something had felt wrong from the start of the day. The silence was different, as if the forest were holding its breath. The air felt heavier, and even the sounds of the animals, usually constant, had vanished. Trying to ignore this strange sensation, he pressed on. But soon he noticed the path around him seemed to be shifting, as if the jungle were rearranging its own branches and trees to confuse him. Then he heard footsteps in the distance. At first, he thought it was an animal, but the sound was too irregular and slow, almost as if it were dragging itself. A shiver ran down his spine, and instinct told him not to look back. He kept walking, but the sound seemed to follow, coming closer each time. Looking around, he noticed figures among the trees, shadows that seemed to be watching him. Fear began to take hold, and he knew he had to get out of there quickly. He tried to run, but the dense vegetation seemed intent on holding him back, as if the plants were trying to block his escape. In a desperate move, he began cutting through branches and leaves with his knife as he heard the footsteps and whispers drawing closer. When he finally broke free of the area, panting and exhausted, he turned back and saw for the last time a figure at the edge of the trail, something he couldn't explain, but that seemed to be watching him, motionless. He said that after that day, he never returned to that part of the forest, and even now, he avoided talking about what he truly thought he'd seen. The experience had changed him, and as I listened to his words, I felt the weight of the jungle around me intensify, as if the forest itself were listening, recalling that moment. By sharing these stories, was I awakening something that should have remained dormant? After hearing each of these stories, it was impossible not to wonder what could be behind such disturbing events. The Amazon, with its isolation and vastness, seemed the perfect setting for the emergence of legends. But were there rational explanations for these phenomena? Or does the forest truly hold secrets that defy logic? Some scientists and researchers believe that such phenomena can be explained by natural conditions. The high humidity, intense heat, and deep isolation can affect anyone's senses. Being surrounded by an immense forest with little to no visual references can make even the most experienced person feel things that aren't really there. This phenomenon, known as sensory isolation effect, could theoretically explain the whispers, shadows, and even the feeling of being watched. Additionally, the behavior of the forest animals could contribute to the atmosphere of mystery. Some predators, like jaguars and other big cats, are extremely silent, capable of following a person undetected. Even the movement of trees and shrubs caused by an animal's presence can create the sensation that something strange is shifting in the shadows. But what about the accounts of mysterious figures? One theory is that these visions could be hallucinations caused by extreme fatigue and stress. For those who spend days or even weeks inside the jungle, the conditions are unforgiving, and the combination of physical and mental exhaustion could lead the mind to create images that seem real. Even with these explanations, it's clear that none of them fully satisfy. The forest has an almost supernatural presence, a weight that seems to challenge any attempt at rationalization. Perhaps some things in the Amazon simply cannot be understood through science. Remembering the solemn looks of the guides and the stories told with reverence, I start to wonder if, in truth, these legends serve as a form of protection, as if the forest wanted to remind everyone, even the most skeptical, that it's more than just a collection of trees and animals. It's a universe where the inexplicable also has a place. As I reflected on each of these accounts, it was hard to ignore the impact they had left on me. These stories weren't just tales meant to scare. They seemed to carry something profound, almost like a warning of respect. The Amazon is more than just a wild ecosystem. It's a place where mystery intertwines with reality. With every step taken by those who dared to explore its depths, the forest responds, as if testing our courage, or perhaps our understanding of the unknown. The accounts of disappearances, apparitions, and indescribable figures echoed in my mind. I felt as if the jungle, in some way, wanted to remind me of human fragility in the face of something so vast and untouched. Perhaps there are forces there we don't need to fully understand, things that lose their meaning when we try to rationalize them. These experiences challenge our desire for control and logic, forcing us to accept that there are limits. And at the end of this journey, I was left with one unanswered question. Does the forest choose who may leave and who must stay? Maybe these stories truly are warnings for those who dare to disrespect the boundaries of the jungle. After all, some say the unknown exists to keep its distance, and in the Amazon, the unknown is both a protector and a guardian of secrets that we, as humans, are not ready to understand. With that in mind, I leave you, the viewer, with a question. Would you risk entering this jungle, facing the mystery it holds? The Amazon hides secrets we will probably never understand, and maybe that's its true beauty and its greatest mystery. If you're intrigued by the mysteries of the Amazon, there's much more to explore. This is just the beginning of a series diving into secrets of forgotten regions and unexplained phenomena. In our next video, we'll investigate other mysterious places around the world, places where the supernatural challenges human logic. Subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced something unexplainable? Share your experiences and join us in the search for the unknown. Until then, remember, not all secrets wish to be uncovered.